Most people who work hard are not lazy, reckless, or foolish. They are tired. They are confused. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion is a quiet fear that something is wrong. That effort keeps increasing while progress feels strangely absent. The more discipline they apply, the heavier the outcome becomes. Now let's dismantle the belief that quietly keeps most people financially stuck. The belief sounds harmless, even noble. Work harder and you'll get ahead. It's repeated so often that it feels less like advice and more like a law of physics. Put in the hours, stay disciplined, push through resistance. Wealth, we're told, is simply the long-term reward for effort correctly applied. But this belief does something subtle. It trains people to measure progress by fatigue instead of results, by hours instead of outcomes, by how much energy they expend rather than what that energy actually touches. Over time, effort becomes the proxy for value. If you're tired, you must be moving forward. If you're busy, you must be building something. And if you're struggling, the solution must be more effort. This is where the trap forms, because the modern economy does not reward effort evenly. It rewards context. It rewards leverage. It rewards position within systems that amplify input. And when effort is applied without leverage, it doesn't compound, it leaks. Most people sense this long before they can articulate it. They look around and notice something uncomfortable. The hardest working people they know are often the most financially fragile. Nurses working double shifts. Small business owners who never take a day off. Gig workers stacking hours across platforms just to maintain momentum. These are not people avoiding work, they are drowning in it. Meanwhile, others seem to progress with far less visible strain. Their days are not necessarily easier, but their effort appears lighter relative to outcome. They are not grinding in the same way. And this contrast creates quiet resentment, or worse, self-blame. If effort equals wealth, and wealth isn't arriving, then the only logical conclusion is personal failure. That conclusion is false, but it is psychologically convenient for the system. A belief that places responsibility entirely on effort keeps people compliant. It encourages endurance over questioning. If the system isn't working, the answer is never to examine the structure, it's to push harder inside it. This belief produces workers who are resilient, obedient, and exhausted, not wealthy. The deeper problem is not that hard work is useless, it's that hard work is incomplete as a mental model. It explains motion, not direction, energy, not amplification. It assumes all effort exists on a flat surface, where more steps always move you forward. But real financial systems are uneven landscapes. Some steps multiply, others cancel out. Many simply keep you in place. From a psychological standpoint, the belief persists because it offers moral clarity. Hard work feels virtuous. It gives identity. It gives a sense of control in an uncertain world. If outcomes are tied to effort, then life is fair, or at least predictable. Let go of that belief, and something unsettling appears. The possibility that effort alone is not enough, and never was. That realization threatens more than income. It threatens meaning. For generations, effort was not just an economic strategy, it was a moral framework. Parents taught it as protection. Schools reinforced it as preparation. Employers rewarded it symbolically, if not proportionally. Over time, working hard became synonymous with being a good person. Questioning it feels almost unethical. But morality and mechanics are not the same thing. In reality, effort is a cost. Like time or energy, it is something you spend. And spending more of a cost without increasing return is not noble. It's inefficient. Yet inefficiency becomes invisible when effort itself is treated as the outcome. When praise replaces progress. When exhaustion becomes proof of worth. This is why the belief survives even when evidence contradicts it. People do not abandon it because abandoning it feels like abandoning themselves. There's also a neurological component. Effort creates immediate feedback. You feel it in your body. You see it on your calendar. It gives the brain a sense of productivity, even when the external results lag behind. Leverage, by contrast, often feels slow and abstract at first. It can look like inactivity, like waiting, like thinking instead of doing. And for someone conditioned to equate movement with safety, that feels dangerous. So effort becomes a coping mechanism. But over time, this coping mechanism turns corrosive. The harder someone works within a low-leverage context, the more their opportunity cost rises. Energy that could have been allocated toward positioning, learning, or restructuring is continuously reinvested into maintenance. The system feeds on their reliability while quietly capping their upside. This creates a cruel loop. As financial pressure increases, tolerance for risk decreases. As tolerance for risk decreases, people cling harder to effort-based strategies because they feel controllable, which further reduces exposure to asymmetric opportunities, which reinforces stagnation, which demands even more effort just to stay afloat. From the inside, it feels like discipline. From the outside, it looks like entrapment. What makes this belief particularly destructive is that it is rarely challenged directly. Instead, it's updated cosmetically. Work smarter, not harder, people say, without ever defining smarter in structural terms. Smarter becomes faster, more efficient, better optimized within the same constraints. The core assumption remains untouched. Effort is still the primary lever. But a lever only works if it rests on a fulcrum. Without that fulcrum, without position, scale, or asymmetry, effort simply transfers value upward. It benefits the system more than the individual applying it. And the more dependable the effort, the more the system relies on it. This is why many people reach a quiet breaking point. Not burnout in the dramatic sense, but a dull realization that the math doesn't close. That no matter how responsibly they behave, the ceiling doesn't move. Promotions stall, margins thin, time compresses, and the promised payoff keeps receding into the future. At that point, the belief starts to crack. Not because someone read a different idea, but because lived experience contradicts it. Hard work didn't fail. It just wasn't designed to win the game being played. That recognition is uncomfortable. It removes the comforting simplicity of effort-based morality. It forces a more unsettling question. If working harder isn't the answer, what is effort actually doing? And more importantly, who is it really serving? If working harder were the true engine of wealth, the distribution of wealth would mirror the distribution of effort. It doesn't. That mismatch is the first clue that effort is not the lever most people think it is. The inversion begins here. Wealth is not created by how much energy you expend, but by where that energy lands. Effort applied to a flat surface produces linear results. Effort applied to an angled surface produces leverage. And effort applied to a system that scales produces outcomes that feel disproportionate, even unfair. This is not a moral statement, it is a mechanical one. Modern financial systems are built on asymmetry. Small inputs in the right position can produce outsized results, while massive inputs in the wrong position barely register. This is why two people can work equally hard, sometimes one working harder, and end up in radically different financial realities without either of them being dishonest or incompetent. The mistake most people make is assuming effort itself compounds. It doesn't. Only results compound. And results only compound when effort interacts with a structure that remembers past inputs. A machine remembers. A process remembers. A system remembers. Human labor, on its own, does not. This is why effort-based income decays the moment effort stops. The body gets tired. Time runs out. Attention fractures. No matter how skilled or disciplined someone becomes, their output remains bounded by physical and cognitive limits. There is no flywheel. Every day begins at zero. By contrast, systems with leverage retain memory. They store value. They amplify past decisions. They allow yesterday's effort to influence tomorrow's outcome without requiring repetition. This is not about working less. It's about effort no longer being the sole carrier of value. Once you see this, the familiar advice starts to sound strange. Just put in the hours. Stay hungry. Outwork everyone else. These phrases assume a world where effort is scarce and opportunity is evenly distributed. But in reality, effort is abundant. Systems are scarce. And access to leverage, not willingness to work, is what separates outcomes. The inversion is uncomfortable because it reframes struggle. If effort is not the lever, then struggle is no longer evidence of progress. It might be evidence of misalignment. That realization feels threatening because it removes the comfort of certainty. If working harder doesn't guarantee movement, then movement requires judgment, and judgment carries risk. This is where most people retreat. Effort feels safe because it is visible and socially rewarded. Leverage feels dangerous because it is abstract and delayed. It often looks like doing less before it does more. It can resemble hesitation or even irresponsibility to those still operating under the effort equals worth model. But wealth systems do not reward visible strain. They reward invisible positioning. Consider how often financial outcomes hinge on timing rather than intensity. Entering a market early versus late. Choosing a role with scalable impact versus one capped by hours. Aligning with systems that grow independently of your presence rather than ones that require constant supervision. None of these differences are visible in daily effort. They reveal themselves over time. This is why many people misinterpret wealth as luck. From the outside, leverage looks like randomness. From the inside, it often feels like patience combined with restraint. Another inversion emerges here. Risk is not evenly distributed either. Most people are taught to avoid risk by clinging to stability. But what they're actually doing is concentrating risk in a single place, their own labor. If your income depends entirely on continuous effort, then illness, burnout, or disruption become catastrophic. The appearance of safety masks a fragile structure. Meanwhile, systems with leverage spread risk across time, people, or mechanisms. They absorb shocks. They bend instead of breaking. This is why those who appear to take bigger risks often sleep better at night. Their exposure is asymmetric. Their downside is capped. Their upside is not. Effort-only strategies reverse that equation. The downside is unlimited exhaustion. The upside is capped by endurance. This inversion also explains why advice to work harder persists even among those who benefit from leverage. It is easy to mistake the final outcome for the cause, to look back and see effort everywhere while overlooking the structural decisions that amplified it. Effort is remembered. Positioning is forgotten. But if effort were the driver, then adding more effort should reliably increase wealth. In practice, it often increases complexity instead. More tasks, more responsibilities, more stress. The system expands to consume the effort without improving the return. This is how people become indispensable, but not independent. Productive, but not powerful. Busy, but not free. The inversion cuts deeper still. In many systems, the most valuable actions look counterintuitive from an effort-based lens. Saying no instead of yes, waiting instead of acting, exiting instead of persisting. These choices feel wrong because they reduce visible effort, but they often increase leverage by preserving optionality. Optionality is invisible on a timesheet, but it is foundational to asymmetry. The tragedy is that many people sense these inversions instinctively, but suppress them. They feel guilty for wanting outcomes that don't correlate with exhaustion. They distrust opportunities that don't require visible struggle. They equate ease with dishonesty, forgetting that systems don't care how hard something feels. They only respond to structure. Once this inversion is seen clearly, the original belief begins to collapse under its own weight. Working harder doesn't make you poorer because effort is bad. It makes you poorer when effort becomes a substitute for leverage. when it keeps you locked into systems that consume energy without amplifying it. The question is no longer whether effort matters. It does. The real question is what effort is actually connected to, and whether that connection multiplies or drains it. That question cannot be answered with more work. It requires a different way of seeing progress itself. Section 3. Once effort is no longer treated as the primary lever, something subtle but destabilizing happens. The internal compass most people use to judge progress stops working. The familiar signals, fatigue, busyness, sacrifice, lose their authority. And in the absence of those signals, many people feel briefly unanchored. This is the moment where most people rush to replace one belief with another. To ask for a new rule, a new formula, a cleaner equation that restores certainty. But the shift required here is not additive, it is subtractive. It begins with letting go of the idea that progress must feel effortful to be real. That idea is deeply embedded because it provides emotional reassurance. Effort feels honest. It feels deserved. It creates a narrative where suffering earns outcomes. Remove that narrative, and the mind has to tolerate a more uncomfortable truth. Outcomes often arrive through alignment, not endurance. This doesn't mean effort disappears. It means effort changes roles. Instead of being the engine, it becomes the amplifier. Instead of proving worth, it becomes a tool applied selectively. Effort is no longer something to maximize, it is something to aim. This mental shift is difficult because it reverses how responsibility is experienced. Under the old model, responsibility meant trying harder. Under the new one, responsibility means choosing better constraints, better environments, better games. And those choices carry psychological weight because they can't be justified by exhaustion. When effort fails, it's easy to say, "I did everything I could." When leverage fails, the question becomes, "Did I choose the right structure?" That question is quieter, more personal, and harder to outsource. Another discomfort emerges here. Progress becomes less visible. When effort is the metric, progress can be felt daily. When leverage is the focus, progress often looks flat for long stretches. The feedback loop lengthens. And the mind, conditioned for immediate validation, resists this delay. This is why many people oscillate back to effort-heavy behaviors during uncertainty. They feel productive again. They feel safe again, even if nothing structurally changes. But over time, something else becomes noticeable. When effort is no longer spread thin across maintenance, mental bandwidth increases. Attention shifts from motion to direction. From, "How much am I doing?" to, "What is actually moving because I'm here?" That question reframes ambition itself. Instead of asking how to earn more through exertion, the focus turns to where effort creates optionality, where it compounds instead of evaporating, where one decision influences many outcomes. These are not tactical questions, they are framing questions, and they change how reality is interpreted. Risk is reframed too. Under the effort-first mindset, risk feels like instability. Anything that threatens routine feels dangerous. Under a leverage-aware mindset, risk is evaluated asymmetrically. The question is no longer, "Can this fail?" but "What happens if it works, and what happens if it doesn't?" This is a quieter form of courage, less dramatic, less visible, but more durable. It also dissolves the moral charge around ease. When outcomes improve without proportional exhaustion, there is no longer guilt, only clarity. Ease is not a character flaw. It is often a signal that structure, timing, and effort are finally aligned. The most unsettling realization comes last. Many people discover that working harder made them poorer, not because they lacked intelligence or discipline, but because effort gave them an identity that systems could exploit. They became reliable, predictable, necessary. And in becoming necessary, they surrendered leverage. Letting go of that identity can feel like a small loss. The loss of being the hard worker, the dependable one, the person who always shows up. But what replaces it is not laziness or detachment. It is agency. Agency does not announce itself loudly. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels calm. It feels like space. And in that space, a different definition of progress quietly takes hold. One that is no longer measured by how much you give, but by what continues to grow after you stop pushing.